1. Welcome to Made for More Living.
One small step for man.
With Johnny Jennings.
Kick the tires and light the fires, Big Daddy.
The fastest and most exciting hour of news, events, and real estate in Northern California.
And this is a fact that was proved.
Powered by eXp Realty. Online at madeformoreliving.com.
Does everybody know what time it is?
Get ready. Here we go.
This is the number one thing that I see other real estate agents doing, and it drives me crazy. And here to discuss it, here to handle this issue, is none other than the managing broker for eXp Realty of Northern California. You're also a designated managing broker for all of eXp California, and you manage commercial. Is that right, Ryan?
Yeah, there's a little. I'm the designated broker for Northern California. I'm a managing broker for the other regions, and I'm a licensed officer for commercial as well. Yeah.
Licensed officer. There you go. And so the number one thing that drives me crazy
too,
is when an agent says my client's not going to do that. Well, you didn't even present it to them. You didn't even ask. How do you know?
Yeah.
Well, I just know. Well, present it to them and come back to me. Like, how often do you run into that situation?
Yeah, we get that a lot. We get a lot of times where our agents will come to us and say, "Hey, this is what I'm getting from agents on the other side, right? I'm presenting this. This is what my client is asking for," and the agent on the other side is saying, "Absolutely not. My client's never going to go for that.
Yep.
They're never going to go. They're not going to do it." And it's like, well, I always have to bring our agent back, because a lot of times our agents get emotional about it as well, right?
And I get hot about it.
You get hot about it, right? It's only natural, and they're like, "How dare they do this?" And so I always kind of bring our agents back down. I'm like, "Listen, I'm not a decision maker. You're not a decision maker. The other agent's not a decision maker, right? Who's the decision maker? The principals, the buyer and the seller. And so we have to allow them to make the decision. So it's one thing for that agent to say, "Hey, listen, my client's never going to go for that. You're asking for a $50,000 credit, and we told you it's as is."
Yep.
Well, you know what? This is what my buyer wants. Present it. If the seller says no, seller says no. The seller, we don't know, right?
You never know. But then also, what I think the problem is the agent's ego is tied up in it.
Such an egotistical business that we're in. And, I hate to say that, because I love this business. And there's so many good people out there, but there are a lot of people out there that have done such a significant amount of business that they tell you. I mean, I can't tell you how many times people have said, "You know how long I've been in this business? I've been in this
my
business."
word.
Right?
I'm so sick of that.
And so it's like, well, that's great. That's fantastic. But it doesn't change what's going on right now in this day. You can't be the decision maker, and a lot of times that ego comes into play, and it's like, "No, I'm not going to do this. You're going to do it the way I'm going to do it." Can
I ask you a real quick question?
Yeah.
So if I'm selling my home, is my realtor obligated to tell me every offer and every negotiation that's taking place?
Absolutely.
So it's their obligation. They're supposed to tell me everything.
Up to close of escrow. So you can be in a contract with a buyer and have another offer come in, and that offer still must be presented.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they're violating some kind of...
Yes. That's the problem. The problem is, though, like, how do I don't have that... If I'm representing a seller and I'm communicating with the buyer's agent, I don't have the buyer's agent's, like the client's contact info.
Right.
I can't even, if I wanted to, I couldn't even contact them.
There are ways for us to, it tends to get really extreme when we get to this point, but there are ways for us to say, okay, well, the agent is being non-responsive. The agent is not telling us they're presenting. They're not returning communication. And there are steps that we can take to go directly to the other principal. Typically, when it's an offer being made and we're not getting a response from the seller or or the listing agent, we can actually start contacting the seller. But we have to take initial steps. We have to try to attempt to do it through their agent first. And if the agent is not responsive or they're not telling us that they presented the offer, there are certain steps that we can take, but it's extreme.
So you seem very passionate about this.
Yeah.
Can you give an example or tell a story of when this has happened and give an example to clarify what we're talking about?
Yeah, so the two common things that I run into, and Ryan, so I run into this less because Ryan's responsible for thousands of agents, and so he's always dealing with it, and I'm responsible for 30. And so I see it less, but there's two main situations. One is when presenting an offer to a seller. If I'm representing the buyer and I'm presenting the offer to the listing agent, the agent representing the seller, is that offer actually getting presented? Because again, it goes back to the ego. That listing agent may have told them, "Hey, I can get you this much for the house," and then all of a sudden these offers are coming in much lower than what that listing agent promised. Makes the listing agent look bad, and so he's just not even showing them, or she's not even showing them to their seller to protect their ego. And it's really not their decision. It's the seller's decision. right? To decide, hey, yes, I'm going to reject it, counter, or let's accept this.
Because that's one of your negotiating tactics, right? Is to, in some cases, to create a bidding war.
Oh yeah. So for us, and that's the other side of the coin. So if I'm on the if I'm representing the seller, now buyer's agents are coming to me and saying, hey, I want to present this offer. It's now my job to present all these offers to my sellers or to my seller and make sure that they have reviewed all of them and that they're picking the best offer for them.
And understand it too, because it's not as simple as just the price that's being offered.
Correct.
A lot of times sellers, that's what they want to focus on. They want to see what that number is, but there are so many other terms that are involved in that offer that can adjust the price, the overall net that they're taking away at the end. And we need to be able to explain that to them. I mean, I think I was at one of your meetings, Johnny, and I was telling people, if you're not preparing a seller's net sheet or going to your escrow company and having them prepare a seller's net sheet, shame on you.
Oh, absolutely.
You need to be doing that.
You know how often I'm in the living room and they're like, yeah, so-and-so, we interviewed somebody else and they came back to us and they gave us this net sheet a couple days later. I was like, a couple days later?
Yeah.
And then I whip out my phone, and as long as I have a Wi-Fi connection,
So
I can
what's
get them
a net sheet?
I can get them a net sheet in 30 seconds. And all a net sheet, what a net sheet is it shows you what you will net from the sale of the property. So in terms of real estate commissions, closing costs, build in a little bit of repairs. There's four main buckets. Paying off the loan. There's four main buckets like of expenses when selling a home. The first bucket is the agent representing you, as the seller. The second bucket is the agent representing the buyer. Third bucket is any closing costs, like the title escrow company, things like that. And then I always tell them the fourth bucket is just budget for repairs.
Yeah.
At least budget $5,000. Make a mental note, just like a mental line item. So then that way you're not surprised whether the house is brand new or 100 years old. You've at least built some budget into the process. And then of course there's paying off the loan would be the fifth, but everybody knows that one if there is a loan.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's a lot of it too that you talk about $5,000. I always kind of, in my own personal rule of thumb, was to advise 1%.
I like 1%. That's good.
Yeah, 1%. And you make a really valid point too. The house could be a year old. Quite honestly, sometimes builders out there, they do really shoddy work when it comes to building these homes, and so there could be requests for repairs that you're not prepared for as a seller because you're thinking my house is 1 year old. You don't even know. You don't even know. And that actually ties into the second thing that we run into a lot as real estate agents, and that's seller disclosures, right? Mm-hmm. Because oftentimes these sellers have not gotten their property inspected prior to going on the market, and so they haven't paid for the roof, the pest, the home inspection. We're starting to see a lot of sewer lateral inspections. Yeah, sewer lateral's big.
Like that's become a huge thing because if it's working close and unless you have a problem, you don't know that there might be a root issue.
Right. I mean, think of it like this: if you're just living your day, your house isn't on the market. Are you just proactively going and getting an inspection, saying, "Hey, my toilet's flushing. I want to see if my sewer lateral's clogged up."
I want to scope the pipes.
I want to scope the pipe. Nobody does that,
no.
Right? And so when you talk about seller disclosures, great point, Johnny, is that a lot of times, when you look at seller disclosures, a big chunk of it is, are you seller aware of? That's kind of the question that leads into it. Right?
Are you aware?
Are you aware of? And I always take the mentality: disclose. We live in California; it's a very litigious state, right? And so I'd rather you say, well, I think there might be an issue here. I think there might be an issue there, and disclose it, and let the buyer investigate it independently on their own and discover whether there is an issue or not.
Yeah.
But in regards to disclosures, a lot of times, sellers, they don't know a lot of information.
Yep.
And what's tough is in California, seller disclosures are mandated by law. It's California Civil Code. And so you can't just not do it. And because we are tasked as the licensees with guiding and advising. A lot of times sellers will say, how should I answer this question?
Oh, that's dangerous.
That's so dangerous because we can't tell you. We can't tell you how
legally, we can't tell you how to answer.
Yeah, I can explain the question to you. This question is asking about this. I can help break down that question for you, but I can't tell you whether you should check yes or no on it. Right?
Yep. So those are the two big things I'm seeing. Is like, one, agents you are not decision makers. I do not care how long you've been doing this. Like, I've been doing this for 35 years and I've never had this issue before. I'm like, well, apparently you haven't sold a lot of homes in 35 years because I've only been doing this for 10 and I've run into this 50 times.
And even if you have been selling a ton of homes every year for 35 years, this business is very, very organic and it changes constantly.
And it changes.
So it's like, even though something may be new to you, it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist and doesn't need to be addressed.
So explain why they are doing and behaving the way that you're saying that frustrates you? And you mentioned it. You mentioned one reason might be because they're not bringing in the offers that they promised the seller.
Yeah, it's really.
Is there any other reasons?
I mean, the big thing I see is they want control and they don't want to yield that control, and they want to be presenting solutions to their buyers. So often I meet with sellers and with clients, and they're say, hey, I just want it to be easy. Just let me know what I have to do. Just advise me. I'll make the decision, but just advise me. And so sometimes these situations come in and it's contrary to maybe what that agent would have advised, and they don't want to, get in between that situation. But it's really they're just the conduit. They're not there to make the decision for the client.
Right.
What are you typically seeing?
Yeah, I mean that's exactly it. Is that they're either that right where they're saying, hey, listen, I don't want to go back on something that I advised you before. I kind of made a commitment or a promise to you or whatnot. The other thing too is this is a 100% commission-based business, right? And agents, they start counting that compensation before the end, and so,
or spending it,
unfortunately, right?
Yeah.
And so they're apprehensive to create any kind of situation that's going to throw a wrench in the works, right?
Yep.
So your frustration comes from working with buyers, and you're presenting offers, and you feel like they're not getting communicated to the seller. They're not being reviewed and looked at.
So whether it's buyers or sellers, my frustration lies with the agent making a unilateral decision for their client. It's not the agent's job to make that decision. It's the client's job to make the decision. It's the agent's job to present the request for repairs, to present the offer, to present the rent back request.
And obviously this isn't happening with your team, right?
No, they hope not. They present it. If not, Ryan would be on us, like white on rice.
But how are you dealing with this? Is this because you are representing buyers and you feel like your offers are not getting reviewed?
It's not only buyers. It's really buyers or sellers. It's any representing, whether I'm representing buyers or whether I'm representing sellers. It's when I'm sitting across from another agent that is not clearly communicate like this is a great deal. This is a great offer. The home's been on the market 100 days. Why that we're only asking for $2,000 credit, and there was $50,000 in issues that came up. Like, why are you? This isn't, the dots aren't connecting.
Yeah.
And so when you're not, when I run into that, it's very frustrating when the agent just won't do their job and communicate to their client what we're saying. Because I don't know what they're saying.
I always say that, I absolutely love this business. And probably the only thing that I can say that I don't like about it is I'll run into an agent on the other side that just makes it so hard. I mean, when you work with somebody that's great, it's fantastic. Yep. And we each have a responsibility to our own client, right? So I know that they're working on their behalf, but just the communication by itself, the acknowledgement that it's like you said, hey, there's $50,000, we're asking for two, what can we do so that we can bring this together for the benefit of both of our clients, right? As opposed to just putting up a brick wall kind of thing.
Yep.
That's the best thing is when you get somebody good, because there's so many people out there that are just not good to work with.
And that's honestly how we're able to get our clients great deals on homes, either when selling a house or buying a house. And it's because we have a great reputation in the marketplace, and people know that we're doing the right thing. And so they're excited to work with us. We're very communicative with the other side. Not that we're working for the other side, we're working for our clients. But the best way to get the deal done is to communicate efficiently and effectively, and just present all information. And so, but there's more. A big change.
There's more.
But wait, there's more. So when we come back, we're going to discuss this big thing, the whole NAR lawsuit. It's been in national news, and we have the broker for EXP Northern California here to put this issue to bed.
Mike, it's so hilarious when we hear about realtors who are so desperate to sell your house that they're willing to offer free pizza. Now, our friend Johnny Jennings with the Tom Daves team, he doesn't need to use dumb gimmicks like free pizza to sell your house. He's got an entire team of experts that know how to get it done fast. In fact, they recently helped Kathleen and Phil, who wanted to sell their home in Folsom so they could retire out of state. Johnny Jennings and his Made for More team were able to not only sell their home in 6 days, less than a week, but also earn them a record price for that neighborhood.
Yeah, and we talk about an entire team, and not a lot of realtors have that. But Johnny Jennings has a full staff dedicated to making your home selling process the easiest and most efficient it can be. And that's just one of the many reasons why they're Sacramento's most positively Google-reviewed real estate brokerage with nearly 800 five-star reviews, and they've been voted the #1 team in Roseville for the past 3 years. So if you need to sell your home fast and get top dollar for it, reach out to Johnny Jennings Jennings and the Tom Daves team at Made for More Realty. Ask about their Bay Area marketing plan and how you can get multiple instant cash offers. Expect more, get more with Johnny Jennings and the Tom Daves team at Made for More Realty, brokered by EXP. Just Google Made for More Realty today and get more for your home. License number 581837.
This is Made for More Living with Johnny Jennings, powered by EXP Realty. Online at madeformoreliving.com.
So in the studio with us today is Ryan Rosas, and most people don't know this, but you're actually, so when I tell people that Val and I moved here and we didn't know anybody, technically that's right. Technically, maybe that's not entirely the truth, because
You sound like a presidential candidate.
yeah. Hey, maybe Johnny for office.
Debate, yeah.
Johnny for office. But the reason why I say technically is because Valerie and I, before we moved here, before we were actually like living here, we went through 2 weeks of onboarding in Irvine at our previous brokerage where we met you.
Right.
And then after that 2 weeks, we moved up here. And so technically we knew you from Irvine.
Right.
But
just barely.
But just barely by 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So you were one of the first people that we met when we moved up here. I've known you now, what was that, January of 2018?
Yeah, I think it was 2018.
Or December of 2018, something like that?
Maybe December 2017. I think it was, something like that.
Yeah. So known you a long time. And one of our, Valerie, my dearest friends up here in California, and or in Northern California. And what I really appreciate about working with Ryan is his knowledge and his experience. Before, because we were always asking you questions when we were at the previous brokerage, good old Purple Bricks. And we were always asking you questions, and you were always there to support us. But now now you're with EXP as the designated managing broker for Northern California. So, you've gone on to bigger and better things than slinging houses with Valerie and I.
Right.
And we still rely on you for that information. So when it comes to this whole situation with NAR and the lawsuits and the changes, like, what's the easiest way to explain what's taking place? Because the news likes to terrify rather than clarify, and there's a lot of misinformation.
Yeah, I mean, the premise of the settlement between the plaintiffs and NAR is that cooperating broker compensation, which is broker to broker, right? It's saying that I, as the listing brokerage, am collecting X amount, whatever that amount is, and I'm going to share a portion of my piece of that with whoever brings the buyer. That part actually hasn't been eliminated. What's been eliminated is the advertisement of that sharing through the MLS, which is a tool that nearly every agent in this country uses. If you don't, you're at a huge disadvantage. And so it impacts us a lot because it is such a prominent tool in our business that we can no longer share what that compensation is.
Got it. And so basically that field that was on the MLS, it was not client-facing, but agents could see it. That field has now been removed.
Right.
And that field was essentially, up until August 17th, is what guaranteed what an agent would get paid when they brought a buyer to a deal.
That's right.
And so now with that field being gone, now agents have to disclose in writing, hey, this is what compensation looks like.
Correct, yes.
So what I found interesting about the documentation that came out after this, and you've said this, and I'll just throw it out there, in case anybody needs the disclaimer, things are still changing.
Yeah, I mean, things are changing. I mean, I was telling you this earlier today that, I've been to your team meetings. I've been to many other team meetings around the last few months.
But ours is the best, right?
Yours is obviously the best, yeah. And I even remember saying in the last team meeting, I probably went to your last team meeting 3 or 4 weeks ago or so, and I was saying, I'm giving you information today that is different than the one that I came to last month or the month before, because it's constantly changing. And we as a business, as EXP, as a brokerage, are pivoting to support our agents in the best possible manner. And as we get new information or understand this better, we're shifting what we're telling you a little bit so that you have the most fresh information on it.
Mm-hmm. And so when agents are now, this came out and agents are now saying, hey, you have to sign this contract.
Right.
It's a scary thing for buyers. They're like, why am I going to be locked in with you on this contract? But the reality is that that air quotes contract is non-binding. Like, it defaults to non-binding. Is that correct?
Non-exclusive.
Non-exclusive.
Yeah, non-exclusive. And I think the biggest thing is it's a mental block.
Yep.
Right? Because as agents and as buyers, Yes, a buyer broker agreement has existed in California. There's actually a lot of states that it didn't exist at all.
That's crazy.
That's
to me.
part of the lawsuit as well.
Yeah.
But,
like if other states were doing what California was doing, there probably wouldn't have been an issue.
But even here in California, we've had the existence of a buyer broker agreement, but it was just not utilized for the most part by most agents. And so agents in general, over decades now, have gotten really bad about having a conversation with buyers about what compensation looks like and the services that I'm providing to you and how I get paid for those services. Yeah. Even prior to this lawsuit, when it was being offered as a compensation through marketing in the MLS, our agents in general weren't having those conversations with buyers. And buyers, as a result of years and years and years of not getting those conversations, I mean, I could be a very savvy real estate, buyer and seller, and I haven't had that conversation in years with an agent at all. And so I'm all of a sudden, Johnny's putting this buyer broker agreement in front of me, and I'm like, what? Where'd
this come from? Why? what changed?
What changed?
I'm not signing that.
Right. And it's like I'm obligated to pay you. I've never had to do that, right? And so, the piece of advice that I give is that our agents, any agents, actually not just our agents, any agents, they've got to get darn good about having that compensation conversation with a buyer and explaining to them how it works. Yes, this is a contract. You're engaging me for my services, just like if you were to engage an attorney. I always give that analogy, right? Just that attorney doesn't work for free, right? They're not getting payment from the other side.
Speaking of attorneys, though, they charge a retainer. Like before, win or lose, they're getting paid.
They're getting paid.
You only owe me money if you get what you want.
Yeah, but in California, we as real estate licensees cannot charge retainers. It's illegal.
I know.
So
I'm just saying, like we're better than attorneys. we're it's a better situation.
Yeah. But so what happens is that now, that client is saying, well, where is this coming from all of a sudden? Why is this in front of me? And we just have to get really good about explaining what our value proposition is, that there's a cost for our service. And by the way, even though there's a cost for our service and there's this contract between me and you, I'm going to work my tail off to get somebody else to cover that cost for you. Mm-hmm. So, and there's nothing that prohibits the seller from paying the buyer broker. Even this lawsuit, there's nothing that prohibits it. The prohibition is the advertisement of a certain cooperating broker compensation.
Because it was considered price fixing? Or what?
Yeah, that's the premise of the Department of Justice, is they're saying it's price fixing, right? And that because real estate commissions have averaged the same amount for a significant period of time. And
I noticed you didn't say the number.
Yeah, so they've averaged a certain particular amount. And the other thing that the
six bananas
the DOJ was saying is that, hey, listen, not only have they averaged that, but the seller wasn't actually being given the opportunity to choose what to share of that. So whether it's 6 bananas, let's just use as an example, it's 6%, right? That the seller is willing to pay the listing brokerage. The listing agent was then predetermining what they were willing to share with whoever brought the agent. And a part of the premise of the lawsuit is, well, that's not your decision, agent. That's the seller's decision.
But in California, though, it was broken out. Like I remember going, this is what you pay. This is the total fee, and this is what we recommend you offer out to the buyers.
And you have to remember this lawsuit, this settlement is on a national level, right? And we here in California and our forums had a really great breakdown of what a lot of that stuff is. But there's a lot of states that it didn't exist at all, right? Yeah.
So, yay, California. We were doing our forms right.
Yeah.
But then this whole conversation about compensation, now we've been talking about the buyers and how, yes, the seller can still pay the buyer's fee. And, there's ways that we can build this in. We at the Made for More team actually have some strategies. So you as a buyer necessarily don't have to pay it or feel it or really use that as a barrier between you and the home of your dreams. But there's now the agent side where there's been a lot of miscommunication, a lot of confusion around EXP as a company and what they're like they're not offering buyer agent compensation, which is technically correct, but the way it's received is 100% incorrect. So can you expound a little on that?
Yeah. And we have a fantastic CEO at the helm of our company.
Absolutely.
Right now.
Shout out Leo Preha.
Man, fantastic CEO. And he understands the position we're in as a business, and he wants us to spearhead changes to help adhere to the settlement and the different changes that are inevitably going to come into our industry. And so what we as a business, as a brokerage, have decided is
a global, national brokerage.
Correct. Not just California, right? Is we've said, hey, listen, broker to broker compensation. I'll go back to that example I had just a moment ago. The listing agent, traditional broker compensation, the listing agent is going to say, I'm charging you 5% out of that. And so that 5% is actually payable all to the listing brokerage.
Yep. Originally.
right? And then I'm going to slice a piece of that off, 3%, 2%, 2.5%, whatever it may be, and share it with whoever brings the buyer. So we as a company have said, we're just going to charge you for our service, right? So I'm representing you as a seller. My cost, the cost for my service is X. 2%, 10%, 1%, whatever it may be, whatever is negotiated between the listing agent and the seller, right?
Yeah.
What we're not doing is pre-authorizing an additional percent to be shared with whoever brings the buyer. We're still encouraging our agents to have conversations with the seller to say, hey, listen, inevitably a buyer's broker is going to ask in the negotiations with their buyer for you to pay for that service. I always give the analogy of, let's say you go into a listing appointment and the seller, the first thing he says is, hey, listen, my roof's been leaking. It's horrible. It's a horrible roof. I know it's bad. I don't have the money to pay for it.
Yep.
But I have equity in the house. And so when we sell, I'm willing to give a credit to have the roof repaired or replaced or whatever it may be. Yeah. The conversation's no different than that. You go in and you say, hey, listen, okay, just like you're willing to negotiate that credit, you should, I encourage you to be willing to negotiate the payment of a buyer broker compensation upon acceptable terms in an offer. Yep. So we're not going to pre-authorize it. We're not going to say that we're slicing a piece off and we're guaranteeing the payment. That's what EXP is doing. We're not standing in the way of a seller negotiating that and being able to provide that. Absolutely not. We're just saying we're not collecting it up front and providing it directly to the buyer broker. We're wanting the decision maker, the seller, to determine what's in their interest.
And really, that's the way it should have always been.
Absolutely.
I think it was ridiculous that we were collecting all the fees and then dispersing it. And so that makes sense. Shout out to Leo Preal for leading the change. Because now you're seeing a lot of other brokerages go, oh, that makes sense. Why aren't we doing that?
Yeah. What's interesting, though, is on the flip side to that, there's a lot of brokerages that we're seeing that don't do that. So if you are here in the state of California, you're a real estate agent, you know that we used to have a form called the Cooperating Broker Compensation Agreement, which was a form that allowed us to modify, confirm, whatever that cooperating broker compensation. That form is gone. Our association has removed it from the forms library. But what we have seen is a significant amount of other brokerages creating that form. And they're saying, okay, well, we are offering broker-to-broker compensation, right? Which, again, there's nothing that prohibits that. We as a company said that we just aren't going to pre-authorize it, right? Yeah. But they're pre-authorizing it, and they created their own form to do that. And we're telling a lot of our agents come in and say, hey, can we get these? Is this against the rules? And it's like, no, that's their decision. If the listing brokerage on the other side is making that call, that's their decision to make.
Got it.
We're not going to stand in the way.
So to put a bow on this, all that's changed is we're not allowed to advertise in the MLS what the buyer's agent is going to be offered when they bring a buyer to that property. That's basically all that it is. And so now, as an agent, it's your responsibility to have this conversation up front with your client and just say, hey, this is what the fees typically look like. We're disclosing everything to you. I'm going to do my best to earn your business and find you that house. And then when we do find you that house, then at that point, only after you get what you want, are you going to then compensate me for the countless hours I've spent working with you?
Yeah, exactly. And what we're seeing, in light of even the broker-to-broker compensation and the MLS going away and all that, the MLS advertising going away, is that sellers are absolutely still willing to compensate buyer brokers directly and negotiate that into the offer. We have seen very little resistance to that.
Yeah, it's like, I think the most recent stat I saw was 97%.
Yeah, it's a huge number.
It's a huge number. And here's why. Sellers may be thinking, well, why do I have to do that? I don't want to have to pay a buyer's agent. Okay, well, I encourage you, especially here in like the Sacramento region, there's a lot of new construction.
Yeah.
Take an afternoon off, take a Saturday, go down and walk a new construction home. You're going to see two things. You're going to see that the models are staged, and you're going to see that they are offering buyer agent compensation. If staging a house and offering buyer agent compensation did not add to their bottom line, do you think the builders would be doing that?
Not just that, but they're typically offering the buyers huge incentives as well. Thousands and thousands of dollars. So you make a really valid point. They're in a business. They're in a big business.
Yeah.
If their bottom line didn't have the profit level, they would not be offering that.
Correct. Yeah. Great point. Mm-hmm. So Ryan, thank you so much for being on the show today. Any final thoughts before we let you go?
Just do the right thing, right? Make smart
decisions.
Do the right
thing. And if you have any questions, when in doubt, contact Ryan Rosas.
That's right.
Thanks so much, man.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, Matt, it is never too early to start planning for your retirement because when you get there, you want to just be able to enjoy yourself. Kathleen and Phil did that, but part of their plan to retire out of state was selling their home and, of course, getting the most that you could possibly get. So, of course, they called Johnny Jennings and his Made for More team. They were not only able to sell their home in just 6 days, but he earned them a record price for their neighborhood, which is pretty impressive.
Maybe that's why they were voted the #1 team in Roseville for the past 3 years, or why they have almost 800 5-star Google reviews. They've got a full staff dedicated to making your home selling process the easiest and most efficient it can be. They sell homes 27% faster and for a 3% higher purchase price than everyone else in town. So expect more, get more with Johnny Jennings and the Tom Daves team with Made for More Realty, brokered by EXP. Just Google Made for More Realty today and get more for your home. License number 581837.
This is Made for More Living with Johnny Jennings, powered by EXP Realty. Online at madeformoreliving.com.
Matt, it just fires me up. I do not understand why agents think that it's their job to withhold information from their clients and not disclose certain things.
Well, did you hear what happened with Jeff Bezos, who was purchasing a mansion in Miami? They didn't tell the seller that it was Jeff Bezos. He's like the richest guy in the world right now, right?
He's up there.
He's got more money than he'll ever figure out what to do with this in his entire life. But apparently he lowballed the offer, $6 million less than what they were asking.
What do you mean lowball? Like
it sold for $79 million, which is $6 million less than the seller wanted.
Okay, well, first of all,
I feel like in my world, $6 million is lowballing it.
$6 million is a lot, but this is a really clear distinction to make. The listing price is the marketing price. It's not what the home's worth. So if, let's say he listed it for $35 million and it sold for $30 million above, did he overpay for the property?
I don't know. I'm just saying here, Jeff Bezos, you got more money than you'll ever figure out what to do with. Just give the guy what he's asking for. Come on.
Just give your fellow billionaire a break. No, but here's the thing.
It's true, but listen to this. Now the seller is mad. He's ticked off, so he's suing the real estate company for not telling him that it was Jeff Bezos purchasing the home, because I think Jeff Bezos wants to combine it with another adjoining property so he can have multiple mansions.
Create a compound.
Again, with more stuff than he'll ever know what to do with. And just pay the guy the full price, what he's asking.
But here's the thing. I disagree. One, I don't think it matters who's selling the house. Like, if you're willing to sell, if you both came to terms over a price, and if, let's say, the property even appraised for that price, you're not underpaying, you're not overpaying. That's market value for the home. You know, it's the agent's job. Like the seller gets to pick the listing price, but the buyer is the one that ultimately decides what that home is valued at.
That's true. But come on, if you knew Jeff Bezos was in the market for your home, and you found out that they through negotiations he gave you less than what you wanted for it, you'd be pretty upset.
I would be pretty upset. But what happens if
But
what if Jeff Bezos walked over that $6 million? Now you have no $1 million. And come on, we're talking about crazy numbers. Here's where I don't
think he was going to walk away from that.
So
maybe
I
don't know Jeff Bezos like I think I did.
You don't know him?
It's been a while since we've had coffee. Maybe he's like that. Maybe he's like a Donald Trump, where he's a hard negotiator and he doesn't want to be taken advantage of.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of other options, when buying a property. Like, you don't necessarily have to get them list price. But here's where I think this is pure speculation. I don't know even the agent's names, let alone the details of the situation. But if the agent representing the seller knew that it was Jeff Bezos and withheld that information, then I think a line was crossed.
Oh, okay. So maybe he was told that, yes, this is Jeff Bezos.
If he was told that, and then and he knew that was important to his seller, but he just wanted to get the deal done, and so he withheld that information because he knew that if he disclosed that, the seller might be like, "Oh, I want my $6 million."
I would assume that he was not told that.
I would too.
I think for a high-profile personality with that much money, they don't disclose who their client is. Would you agree?
I would agree. But my point is if that listing agent knew, then a line was crossed.
Yeah.
Then a line was crossed. But as far as suing the other side...
Why would a line have been crossed? Because the seller's agent needs to tell him everything?
Yeah, he should disclose that. Like, especially if he knows that Jeff Bezos is buying a property.
But what if he did like a pinky promise? Promise not to tell your client who this guy is.
I mean, I don't know how it is in Florida, but in California, you have a legal obligation to your client to disclose.
Tell them everything.
Yeah, it's not your job.
You're like the lawyer.
It's not your job to withhold information and decide what's right and what's wrong for your client.
I didn't read the whole entire article, but I'm wondering then if it was the buyer's agent is who he's suing. Maybe he's suing the real estate firm who was representing Jeff Bezos.
No, that's ridiculous. What you're suing, that's like suing the lawyer who defeated you in court.
Oh, listen to this. Actually, the real estate firm handled both sides of the deal.
Oh, okay. Now you got a lawsuit. now I'm on team. Yeah.
Okay, so why have you changed your perspective on that?
Because they obviously knew who the buyer was. They knew, and they double ended the deal. They got the deal done for $6 million less than what they clearly withheld information.
They didn't net as much.
What do you mean?
The real estate company, they didn't net as much.
Oh, but you netted more. So if you double in the deal, so let's just say 1%. If he was only representing the seller, he was only going to get 1% of that $80 million.
Right.
But
so
now he got 2%.
How are you saying that he crossed the line?
Because they knew. They did not. So this is a great. I'm so glad you discovered that in the article, because this is why I do not represent both buyers and sellers on the same transaction. Now, if the seller is also going to then buy a different property, I'll help them with that. But I will not represent the seller of a property and the purchasing that same property. And here's why: you cannot exclusively, to the best of your abilities, represent both parties 100%. There's always going to be some give and take there. And so what happened here is they decided to represent the buyer and withhold information about who the buyer was to the seller. The seller absolutely should have known who that, like, it's very important to him who is purchasing this property. And if they knew who that was and they did not disclose it, like that, and then they got paid double what they would have gotten paid otherwise. Like that's, I think a line was breached.
This is what they said. They said it was highly material to the negotiations and his decision on the ultimate sale price to know whether Bezos was attempting to anonymously acquire the home in order to assemble it with the adjoining property. They said had he known that it was Jeff Bezos, he would not have budged on the asking price.
Yeah, and I think it's a hard thing. Like, how do you represent both people 100%? This side, they may have technically done the right thing. Their client may have asked them not to disclose it. So now, boom, that wall's gone up. But now technically they know, but they can't disclose it.
That's a tough situation to be in that particular situation.
For the agent, it's very tough.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. They put themselves there. You could broker it out. You could refer it out. You don't have to represent both parties. They chose to take on, the liability of that situation. But here's the other thing,
That's true, because you are in a like you've just said, you are in a negotiating situation where your job is to advocate for one side, to try to win this negotiation, because that's you want to come out winning a negotiation, right?
You want to win.
And so and obviously there can be a win-win situation, but let's be honest, in some respects there's one person who in most cases, who either sells the home for what they were asking for or buys the home for what they want to pay for it.
Yeah, and then so like you said, win-win. You might win on price, but you might lose on terms.
Right.
You might win on the request for repairs, but you might lose on the appraisal. Like there's certain like gives and takes there. But as far as this situation, absolutely. But here's let's flip the script a little bit. We're talking about billionaires. We're talking about wealthy people. I mean, what was it? $79 million, like for. What was even on it? Like, was it just land? Like, I don't know. But $79 million for anything is an exorbitant price, right? Can we agree?
Right.
So let's flip the script. Let's say it's a minority offering on a property, right? Ethically, you should not be the sellers. Like, there's a form we actually have to fill out that says, based off these certain requirements, you cannot discriminate against somebody purchasing your house for these reasons.
Right.
And so. We're talking about billionaires, a bit of a different situation, but so
do billionaires get discriminated?
Are they a protected class?
Are they a protected class?
I don't think so. I don't think
no.
They're not a protected class. But anyways, it's just so when people are now presenting, like, so we represent a lot of sellers. I primarily represent sellers. When somebody gives us a buyer letter on their property. This is one of the rare times I will filter out information. I will have the conversation with the client and say, hey, we may receive buyer letters. I think it's in your best interest not to see these letters, because what if there's a minority family? What if there's a mixed race family? And now you don't select their offer, then it can be said that you didn't select them because of a protected
Interesting,
class.
though, because I had some friends and they bought a home up in the hills and there were multiple offers. And they didn't get the home because they were told by the other agent that, hey, just to let you know, the reason why they decided to sell the home to this other family is because they wrote a sweet letter. They said how much they liked this type of the property, blah, blah, blah. And that's why they won the home. So in their next bid for the home, they said, okay, they wrote a letter and they got the home they wanted. So,
So if you're representing a buyer, write the letter, but know that if you're coming up against a listing agent like myself or others who just understand the legal ramifications of presenting those letters, you may be writing them, but they may not be being presented.
Interesting.
But again, it's up to my client. I'd say, hey, we got some letters. Do you want to see the letters?
Oh, gotcha.
And then if they're like, no, I just want to pick based off the terms of the offer, so that way I'm not being biased or prejudiced against any protected class, then we don't present the letters.
Is it a computer printed typed letter, or is it in cursive? Is it handwritten?
So sometimes what they'll do is they'll actually embed them in the offers, and so you have to split the PDF.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's actually a bit of a headache.
Wow.
But oftentimes it is typed.
It's a little color drawing of their 5-year-old daughter of the house.
In the house. Yeah. I just can't wait for the play in the treehouse. And so what they'll do is they'll typically type it up so it's easily read, like easy to read, so it's not somebody's handwriting. They'll type it up. They'll embed a photo like on the thing, like a Christmas card, and they'll send it in, and then they'll all sign it.
See, I like that though. I'm telling you, if I was selling my home,
you'd want to see the letters.
Yeah, but then knowing that this is a tactic, I'd be suspect too. I don't know. It's like, oh, is this a fake photo? Google it, see if this is an image they pulled online.
Yeah, that looks like the family from Full House.
But that's sweet though. Yeah, exactly. That's sweet though. I don't know. That's just me, but interesting. So there you go. I think Jeff Bezos is going to be all right, whether or not he gets sued or not.
Yeah, whether or not he gets sued, but that agent, I do not. That's why
it's a bad idea.
Yeah, do not do that. If your agent is saying that they'll do that, like that, oftentimes here's what happens is buyers will then come to the listing agent and say, hey, will you reduce your fee? Will you give me a kickback if I go through you, rather than bringing my own buyer's agent into the situation? And so sometimes agents are like, yeah, I'll make a little extra money. I'll control the process. That's good. Sometimes the seller will say, hey, since you're representing both sides here, reduce the fee, and so sometimes like they encourage it, but full stop. I just will not touch it with the 10-foot pole.
That's tough. Apparently he wants to buy 3 homes in this Miami exclusive. It's called Indian Creek Village Island. So he's purchasing 3 homes.
All right. Well,
it's important. I don't know what he needs 3 homes for his 3 wives, his 3 girlfriends.
3 homes on the Christmas list. Hey, if 1 home's good, 3 homes are better.
There you go.
I wouldn't mind being Jeff Bezos' realtor. So, all right. So when we come back, we're going to be talking about the most expensive place to rent and when is it a good idea to do for sale by owner.
Mike, as you know, I am very competitive. So when I'm coaching my kids in soccer, I am loud, I am passionate, I am into it. And you know who's like that as well? Our good friend Johnny Jennings with Made for More Realty. He is passionate about what he does. He's very competitive, like he was with Kathleen and Phil, who wanted to sell their home in Folsom so they could retire out of state. Johnny and his team at Made for More Realty, they were not only able to sell their home in 6 days, but also earn them a record price for that neighborhood.
Yeah, and that's what happens when you use Johnny Jennings and the Tom Daves team at Made for More Realty. You get not just Johnny, but an entire team of professionals dedicated to making your home selling process the easiest and most efficient it can be. And that is why they are Sacramento's most positively Google-reviewed real estate brokerage with over 780 5-star reviews, and they've been voted the #1 team in Roseville for the last 3 years. So if you need to sell your home and you want to be confident that you're getting the best price and it's going to be sold as quickly as possible, you got to call Johnny Jennings and the Tom Daves team with Made for More Realty and ask about the Bay Area marketing plan. Expect more, get more with Johnny Jennings and the Tom Daves team at Made for More Realty, brokered by EXP. Just Google Made for More Realty today and get more for your home. License number 581837.
This is Made for More Living with Johnny Jennings, powered by EXP Realty. Online at madeformoreliving.com.
So we were going to talk about rental incomes and how rents are softening in the market.
I'd still love to talk about that.
Yeah?
I thought you said renting was going to go up.
No, there are the most expensive places in the country, and most of them are on the West Coast. Surprise, surprise.
To rent. So it's a better idea to still buy than to rent.
So right now, that's the tough thing, and it comes back down to home affordability. The tough thing is it's cheaper to rent right now than to actually buy a house. And so you and I have had this conversation, like, is buying a home a good investment? And my stance is long term it can be, 7, 10 years or longer, but short term it's more of a lifestyle choice. And so now when the lifestyle choice is more expensive than renting, it makes it hard. And really, if you looked it up, right now in Sacramento, the average household salary needed to buy a house is $142,000. That's the average, not for a crazy home, a home priced around $542,000. The average salary required is around $142,000. Now, if you want to buy a house that's nicer, slightly nicer, up to $575,000, so it's only, what is that, $25,000 more, the salary needed is now over $156,000. So affordability is how many households are actually making that?
Right.
And so now are they going to cut back on their livelihood and trim the fat, not go to Starbucks, not go out to eat, not do vacations, and maybe not put their kids in the school that they really want them to go to and choose for private or public education because it's more affordable, because they want to have a lifestyle choice for the next 3 to 5 years? That just makes it hard. So I totally empathize with people who are up against that. But another thing that's made it hard, though, is, as you and I were just discussing off the air, was these changes that have come
the rules have changed.
The rules have changed
when it comes to buying and selling a home, especially for the real estate agent.
Yeah.
Correct?
Well, especially for the buyer.
And this is all related to the lawsuit, correct?
Yep. That infamous lawsuit.
And you had told me months ago, don't worry about it. The lawsuit, it's not going to affect anything. Things will just stay the same. And now we're reading all this information. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Everything has changed.
So the process has changed, the substance, maybe instead of making you a sandwich and cutting it across, diagonally, I'm crossing it across the center. I'm still giving you two halves of the same sandwich, but the process has changed.
Yeah, because back in the day, or at least how it used to work, is you could call up a real estate agent and they could drive you around and you could look at a bunch of houses.
You still do that.
And all based on a handshake. And now you have to sign some kind of contract?
So I would not necessarily call it a contract. I tend to prefer to describe it as a disclosure.
Okay.
And so what this form is essentially disclosing, and it's a exclusive, unless your agent checked a certain box, and they should be telling you this, but unless they checked a certain box, it's non-exclusive. So you can sign this form with agent A, you can sign this form with agent B, you can sign this form with agent C, and all three of them can be putting you in their car and driving you around. But what they have done by you completing that form is they've disclosed up to what their fee is going to be to help you buy that house. And oftentimes, again, 97% of the time, that fee is paid for by the home seller. And if you get into a situation where the seller isn't willing to pay that fee, then you have the opportunity to renegotiate with your agent. You're not locked into that situation. It's really just a disclosure, because what the government decided nationally is that on a national level, agents were not disclosing what their fee was adequately. And so now they've put this process in place. Does that clarify it at all?
That's just interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's scary. So if you
because I would think that a lot of home buyers would be nervous, and that's what I've been reading in the articles, is they're a little apprehensive about signing something when they're just trying to do some window shopping. They're just trying to see what's out there, and they're nervous about getting into an agreement this early in the stage.
And so the agent should be disclosing, hey, I would actually have them initial the box saying, hey, this is an exclusive thing. If that's what the agent's going to do, I want point to me. If I was a buyer, show me where this is non-exclusive. Show me where this is, or show me where this is exclusive. And but here at the Made for More team, what we do is we do not lock people into contracts. We want to earn your business, not force you to work with us. And so if you enter in an agreement and you think you complete that disclosure, for lack of a better term, and you decide we're not the best agent for you, or another agent has the house that you really want and you want to work with them instead, hey, that's fine. We didn't ultimately earn your business, so why are we going to expect compensation? And so, but there are agents out there that could lock you into that.
Interesting.
So if an agent, the hard thing is, for the next 18, maybe 24 months, buyers are not going to be used to this. And so, especially if they've bought a home before, they're like, I didn't have to do this last time.
Right.
I didn't have to do this the last 3 times I bought a house.
And they may think you're weird or you work for a weird company because they've like, well, I'm not going to sign that with you. I'll work with another agent who's not going to make me sign this agreement.
But once they walk in, once they talk to enough agents and the agents are like, no, that's legit. Or they talk to their friends. Forget agents. They're not going to trust agents. Agents are talking. Agents are salespeople. They're in it for themselves. That's the mentality of most buyers. And so, but once they talk to 5 of their friends and their friends are like, oh yeah, I had to do that. Oh yeah. It's not a big deal. Then that's fine.
And this is nationwide? It's just in California?
This is nationwide.
Okay.
Yeah. Again, that's my understanding. I don't know how it's actually being implemented. Things are still changing week to week to week to week. But what kills me about this whole thing is that lawyers are saying, no, you should not sign that. You should not agree to that up front. You don't even know if you're going to buy the house, if you really want to work with them, or if they're going to do a good job. I'm like, skirt. Hold up. Hold up, Mr. Lawyer. Last time I worked with you, you made me pay you $5,000 up front, non-refundable, just for a retainer. And there was no guarantee if I was even going to get the outcome I wanted. So for the lawyer to tell me, hey, that's an unethical practice, I'm like, cool your jets, man. You only owe me money if you get what you want. And even then, it's a non-binding thing, you know?
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah.
So anyways, that's what's been changing in the real estate market. So yes, it is normal. Yes, you should be signing these when you go out and look at properties with clients. Yes, they are required, but they are not binding.
And you're saying that even if you go to an open house on your own, you don't even have an agent, even just to go into that open house, you probably have to sign something.
Some people are making so technically, like down to the letter of the law, my understanding is, as of this recording, yes, you should sign something saying, just for this house, this is what the fees are, this is how it works.
Yeah.
And honestly, at the end of the day, it protects not only you, the buyer, but it's also protecting the agent, saying, hey, I disclosed everything up front. Like, I'm not hiding anything. And also, if you're walking into an open house, it's, hey, seller, here's the people who are in your house. This is who probably stole, your silver spoons.
Right. You don't want to get into a $6 million lawsuit with Jeff Bezos.
You don't know.
Right?
No, not with anybody, So anyways, that wraps up this show. So what we covered today was we covered basically this lawsuit, and that, yes, the forms are required, but again, they are not binding. We covered that EXP agents are offering, like their clients are offering compensation to whoever brings the buyer. So there's been a lot of misinformation about that. That is fake news. If you bring a buyer to an EXP house, then and the seller is offering compensation, you will get paid. And then last but certainly not least, you do not want to get in a lawsuit with Jeff Bezos.
No.
So disclose.